word for flower in Hindi, pullo. Think about it, that some of you all heard. The plural is fulbe, fulbe. So if we want to talk about them using the term that they call themselves in most countries, fulbe. I use Fulani because most of us are familiar with the term Fulani, and some people suppose that the Hausa who call them Fulani took the term from Arabic, because in Arabic and in Spanish, and the Spanish got the word from the Arabs during the time when the Moors ruled Spain. The word Fulan in Arabic means, like if you can't remember somebody's name, Mr. Ustaz Fulan, Mr. what's name? It means that somebody who's named Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so. In Spanish it's the same, Señor Fulano, Señor Fulano, but it comes from the Arabic. So I assume the Hausa got the word Fulani from the Arabic text, calling them that name. As for what they call themselves, Fulbe, plural, Fullo, singular. That's what they call themselves. Now, because of the nature of their wanderings, they did not invent those countries that they are trespassing upon. Those are colonial creations. All of those boundaries that they're crossing, they had traversed for centuries. They had evolved a social dialectic with those peoples for centuries, providing milk. Exactly. There was minimum. You will always have conflict between herds, as I make the joke. As long as from the days of Cain and Abel, Cain being the farmer and Abel being the nomadic pastoral, you have always had that conflict. What's happening as the desert has begun to increase, the conflict is becoming more intense. On top of that, weapons given to us by the Europeans with which we never fought before. In the old days, to prove your manhood he wanted to quote another part of Africa. Now he's gone, I'm going to do it. The Afar people, a branch of the Somali, used to prove their strength by fighting with sticks and fight. They were entirely aggressive people. Away because of the climate, the Nakil depression where they live, it's very exacting. So to prove that you can survive there are lots of feats of manhood prowess. Now take these people and hand them guns. What's going to happen? So we have to understand a lot of what is happening in Africa is exacerbated by the use of technology, modern technology, where now instead of people having a standoff and coming to an agreement after a couple days, now we shoot each other dead and that fight will never end. It's ongoing. Now this problem in Mali between the Dogon militia and the Fulani is not unique. Even in Mali, the Tuareg and the Songhai have always been bickering about land rights in Mali. The Tuareg is the name, call them proper name, Amazigh. They're calling themselves now Amazigh. But they historically have had problems over acreage, pasturage and water, sometimes trespassing on the arable land of the Songhai farmers. So it is not this thing between the planning.
Say Arab land or Arable land?
Agricultural land, crop land. Crop land.
Arable is two different things, you know?
Yes. So you see, I think you're channeling that through the radio. You're not channeling. Don't channel. Don't let it wash off on you. He's gone mad. There's peace, right? Peace in our. We got peace in our time.
Yes, sir.
So what we are looking at here is a situation that, okay, let me bring the balance now.
Yes,
let me say to you all why the agriculturalists do have a point.
Yes.
At some stage in our history, we may have to switch from that brand of transhumance herding, taking animals one place, following the rain, and going to another area when the rain ceases to get to the area where the rains have begun to fall. At some stage in our history, that will have to be switched. It'll have to transform into ranching. Now, I lament this. I lament it because for the Dinka of the Republic of South Sudan, for the Maasai of Kenya and Tanzania, and equally for the Fulani of the Sahel, animals are not just commodities to be bought and sold. The animal is a motif in the culture. It's for some of them, like the Dinka, a cow is given to a young man as he grows, and the cow actually becomes his alter ego. He sings songs to his cow, and if his animal perishes, he actually experiences a period of grief, actual mourning for a cow. We may not understand that because of the remove, but this remove for us, a cow is something you milk with these metal tools.
Curry in a pot.
Yeah, you don't even milk the cow with what did you call it?
Curry in a pot. Yeah.
Yes, but you don't milk them anymore by hand. They have these machines. They stand there like if they're not animals. They're not sentient beings. Now, I am saying if we want the Fulani to switch to that sort of to ranching where they don't move constantly, these things will take time. And there is an argument for that. But as I said, there's also a social argument, a cultural argument, that there are some parts of Africa where you simply will not have land that is cultivable. There are areas of the world which are not cultivable. You cannot grow rice or yams, but you can grow tough, hardy grasses which cows can eat. And that is what a lot of us don't understand. When Donald Trump says drain the swamp, you should know when he tells you stand still, run. A swamp is an ecosystem for an entire set of it's a biosphere for all kinds of life. And to drain a swamp, you lose your wildfowl, your ducks, your geese, your swans, you lose water buffalo, you lose the animals that live there. The water hyacinth will go unchecked, it will block up the area, the water will then become contaminated, and so forth. So what I am saying is, when we think about trying to turn every patch of dirt into food producing, some land is not for growing crops, but what will grow there is one of the hardiest of plants, grass, and goats, sheep, camels, cows can live on that, and then we live on them. And that is why that particular kind of animal husbandry started in the first place. There were areas that could not, where the people were living, that could not support agriculture, but it could support animals that feed on grasses you and I cannot eat, turning it into protein and milk, but milk is protein, and we can then eat them. So our agricultural scientists in Africa need to be cognizant of that and try to resist the bias that I was talking about earlier, how we hate the Roma in this country. We have an instinctive hatred for them, and part of it is because they're people who, we say they don't pay taxes and they mess up the place, but it's because they have that freedom to move.
And you're saying that's how people see the Fulani?
Yes, the leaders in Africa are colonized.
But let me ask you this, because my understanding, because obviously we're dealing with West Africa,
yes,
and there's a lot of complex